Growing up with Anna was like living in the shadow of a sparkly, attention-grabbing unicorn. She was always the center of attention. The golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Me? I was more like a potted plant, useful maybe, but not exactly exciting. It wasn't that Anna was a bad person. She was actually pretty nice most of the time. But she had this knack for getting whatever she wanted without even trying. New phone? No problem. Fancy weekend trip with friends? Sure, why not? My parents would bend over backwards to make her happy, to give her everything she desired. Me, on the other hand, well, let's just say my requests were usually met with a resounding no. A new dress for the school dance? You have perfectly good clothes, Melinda, no need to waste money. A smartphone like all my friends had? You can use the landline, dear, it's perfectly adequate. A chance to join the school's coding club? Too expensive, Melinda, focus on your studies. It wasn't like we were poor. My parents both had good jobs and we lived in a nice house in a decent neighborhood. But when it came to spending money, there was a clear hierarchy. Anna's needs were always at the top, while mine were, well, let's just say they weren't exactly a priority. At first, I didn't really understand it. I was just a kid, after all. But as I got older, the unfairness started to sink in. Why did Anna get everything she wanted while I had to make do with hand-me-downs and second best? Was it because she was prettier, smarter, more popular? I didn't know, and it didn't seem fair. I remember one time I really wanted this cool pair of sneakers. All the girls at school had them, and I felt so left out. I begged my parents. I even offered to do extra chores around the house. But they wouldn't budge. Those shoes are too expensive, Melinda, my mom said. And besides, you don't need them, you have perfectly good shoes already. A few weeks later, Anna came home with a brand new pair of designer boots. They were even more expensive than the sneakers I had wanted, and she hadn't even asked for them. My parents had just bought them for her, just because. That's when the resentment started to build. It was like a tiny seed planted in my heart, growing slowly, steadily, until it threatened to consume me. Why did they treat us so differently? Didn't they love me as much as they loved Anna? I tried to talk to them about it, but it always ended in a fight. You're being ungrateful, Melinda, my dad would say. We provide you with everything you need, what more do you want? I want to be treated fairly, I'd say, my voice trembling with anger. I want to be loved as much as Anna. But they wouldn't listen. They couldn't see it, the hurt in my eyes, the injustice burning in my soul. They were too blinded by their own favoritism, their own skewed perception of their daughters. So I did what any self-respecting teenager would do. I rebelled. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a quiet, determined way. I started working part-time jobs, saving every penny I earned. I taught myself how to code, taking online courses, reading books, practicing until my fingers were numb. I started freelancing, building websites for local businesses, earning more money than I had ever imagined. I had a plan to escape their suffocating favoritism, to build my own future, to prove to them and to myself that I was worthy, that I was capable, that I was more than just the other daughter. And I wouldn't let anything stand in my way. My secret stash was my pride and joy. It wasn't just money, it was freedom. Every crumpled dollar bill, every shiny coin represented a step away from my parents' suffocating favoritism, a step closer to my own independence. I kept it all in an old shoe box, the kind you get when you buy fancy sneakers, the kind I was never allowed to have. It was tucked away in the bottom of my wardrobe, hidden under a pile of old clothes and forgotten toys. No one ever looked there, not even Anna. It was my secret, my treasure, my hope for the future. Saving money wasn't easy. It meant sacrifices, tough choices, and a lot of missed opportunities. While Anna was out with her friends, shopping for new clothes or getting her nails done, I was working my butt off at the local diner, slinging burgers and fries to hungry customers. While she was attending parties and school events, I was hunched over my laptop, coding websites for local businesses, my fingers flying across the keyboard. There were times when I felt resentful, when the unfairness of it all threatened to overwhelm me. Why did she get to have all the fun while I was stuck working my life away? But then I'd remember my goal, my dream of escaping their suffocating favoritism, of building my own future, and the resentment would fade, replaced by a quiet determination. I wasn't just saving for college, I was saving for my freedom. Freedom to choose my own path, to pursue my own dreams, to be my own person. And every dollar I saved, every sacrifice I made, brought me closer to that goal. My grandfather, Grandpa Joe, was my biggest supporter. He was a quirky old man, a bit of a recluse, who lived in a creepy old house filled with dusty antiques. He had always been kind to me, always interested in my life, always ready with a warm hug and a twinkle in his eye. He was the only one who truly understood my struggles, the only one who saw the injustice of my parents' favoritism. He listened patiently as I poured out my heart, his wise old eyes filled with empathy and understanding. "Don't let them get you down, Mel," he'd say, his voice gruff but kind. "You're a smart, capable young woman, you can achieve anything you set your mind to." He encouraged my coding endeavors, marveling at my ability to create something out of nothing, to build websites that actually worked. He even hired me to create a website for his antique shop, a quirky little project that earned me a decent chunk of change. "You're a natural, Mel," he'd say, beaming with pride. "You've got the knack for it, you could make a real career out of this, you know." His words were like a balm to my soul, a validation that I craved but rarely received from my parents. He saw my potential, my worth, my value, and he believed in me, even when I doubted myself. Grandpa Joe's house was my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the suffocating atmosphere of my own home. I'd spend hours in his cluttered living room, surrounded by old books, dusty paintings, and strange artifacts from all over the world. He'd tell me stories about his travels, his adventures, his encounters with fascinating people and exotic cultures. He was a world traveler, a collector of curiosities, a man who had lived a life filled with passion and purpose. And he inspired me to dream, to imagine a future where I could be just as free, just as independent, just as fulfilled. Grandpa Joe was more than just a grandfather. He was a mentor, a friend, a confidant. He was the one person who truly loved me unconditionally, without reservation. And I loved him back, with all my heart. He was the reason I kept saving, the reason I kept working, the reason I kept believing in myself. I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to show him that his faith in me wasn't misplaced. I wanted to build a future that would honor his legacy, a future where I could be just as extraordinary as he was. And so I kept adding to my hidden treasure, my shoebox filled with hope and dreams. It was my lifeline, my escape route, my ticket to a better future. And I knew deep down that Grandpa Joe would be there with me every step of the way, tearing me on, guiding me, loving me. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped into Joe's auto. A greasy smell of motor oil and sweat hit me like a wall. Joe, the owner, a burly man with a permanent scowl and a surprisingly kind heart, looked up from under the hood of a beat-up pickup truck. "Melinda," he boomed, wiping his hands on a grimy rag. "You're just in time, the website's working like a charm, customers are actually finding us online now, who knew?" He chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. It had been a challenging project, learning the ins and outs of SEO and online marketing, but I'd pulled it off. And now Joe's auto was getting more business than ever. "Glad to hear it, Joe," I said, trying to maintain a professional demeanor despite the butterflies fluttering in my stomach. "So about that final payment," Joe grinned, reaching into his back pocket and pulling out a wad of cash. "Right here, kiddo, and a little extra for your trouble." He counted out the bills, his thick fingers fumbling slightly. I tried not to stare, but it was hard not to be mesmerized by the sight of so much cash. This was it, the final piece of my college fund puzzle. Years of hard work, of sacrifices, of late nights and missed opportunities, all culminating in this moment. "Thanks, Joe," I said, my voice trembling slightly as I took the cash. "This means a lot." He clapped me on the shoulder, his grip surprisingly gentle. "You've earned it, kid, you're a smart one, Melinda, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I nodded, my heart swelling with gratitude. Joe's words, like Grandpa Joe's, were a validation that I craved but rarely received from my parents. They saw my potential, my worth, my value, and they believed in me, even when I doubted myself. I tucked the cash into my pocket, my fingers tracing the outline of the bills, a tangible reminder of my hard-won victory. This was it, this was freedom, this was my ticket to a better future. I walked out of Joe's auto, my head held high, my steps light. The world seemed brighter, the air cleaner, the possibilities endless. I had done it, I had achieved my goal, and now nothing could stop me. I couldn't wait to get home, to add this final payment to my secret stash, to see my college fund complete, to finally realize my dream. I imagined myself opening the shoebox, carefully placing the bills alongside the others, watching the pile grow, a tangible representation of my hard work, my dedication, my unwavering commitment to my future. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding with anticipation. I was so close to escaping my parents' suffocating favoritism, to building my own life, to finally being free. And nothing, not even the nagging feeling of unease that settled in my stomach, could dampen my spirits. I burst through the front door, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and relief. I did it! I yelled, throwing my bag on the floor and racing towards my room. I got the final payment, I have enough for college. My voice echoed through the empty hallway. Weird, I thought. Usually mom's in the kitchen at this time. I shrugged it off to focus on my mission, to care. I flung open my bedroom door, the familiar scent of old books and dust filling my senses. I went straight to my wardrobe, kneeling down, my fingers reaching for the loose floorboard at the back. But it was gone. The shoebox, my precious shoebox filled with years of savings, was gone. I frantically searched the wardrobe, tossing clothes aside, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't there, it wasn't anywhere. Panic clawed at my throat, choking me. No, I muttered, my voice a frantic whisper. This can't be happening. I tore through my room, searching every nook and cranny, every possible hiding spot. Under the bed, behind the dresser, inside my desk drawers. Nothing. The box was gone. My dreams, my future, my freedom, all gone. I stumbled out of my room, my legs shaky, my vision blurred with tears. I found my parents in the living room, their faces beaming with excitement. Anna was there too, perched on the arm of the sofa, a smug grin plastered on her face. Melinda, honey, my mom said, her voice sickeningly sweet. We have a surprise for you. A surprise? I croaked, my voice barely audible. What surprise? My dad gestured towards the window, where a brand new car, a sleek red convertible, glistened in the driveway. We bought Anna a car, he announced proudly. She needs it for her new job, wouldn't want her to look bad in front of her colleagues, would we? The blood drained from my face. You bought her a car? I stammered, my voice trembling with rage. With what money? My mom's smile faltered. Well, dear, she said, her voice faltering. We used your college fund. The words hit me like a physical blow. My college fund? I shrieked, my voice cracking. You stole my money, the money I worked so hard for, the money I saved for years? My parents exchanged nervous glances. Now, Melinda, my dad said, his voice plating. Don't get upset, it's just money, you can always earn more. Just money? I screamed, my voice raw with fury. It's not just money, it's my future, it's my freedom, you had no right. The argument exploded. Year of pent-up resentment and anger pouring out of me like a volcano. I screamed, I cried, I railed against their injustice, their favoritism, their utter disregard for my dreams. They tried to defend themselves, to justify their actions, but their words were hollow, meaningless. They couldn't understand, they wouldn't understand. They were too blinded by their own selfishness, their own twisted sense of priorities. I stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind me, the sound echoing through the silent street. I couldn't stay there, not another minute. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, I couldn't bear the sight of their smug, self-satisfied faces. I had to get out, I had to escape, I had to find someone who understood, someone who cared. And there was only one person who fit that description. Grandpa Joe. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached, tears streaming down my face, blurring my vision. I didn't know where I was going, I just needed to get away, to escape the suffocating weight of betrayal and despair. My feet instinctively carried me towards Grandpa Joe's. His house, a creaky old Victorian on the edge of town, was my sanctuary, my refuge. I finally stumbled onto his porch, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't even bother to knock, I just pushed the front door open, calling out his name. Grandpa Joe, are you here? The house was eerily quiet. Usually, he'd be puttering around in his workshop, the sound of sawing and hammering a familiar soundtrack to my visits. But today there was only silence. Grandpa Joe, I called again, my voice trembling. I walked through the house, my footsteps echoing in the empty rooms. Something felt wrong, a sense of unease settling in my stomach. The air was thick with a strange tension, a feeling that something terrible had happened. And then I saw it, the flashing lights, the red and white ambulance parked in front of the house, the paramedics rushing in and out, their faces grim. My heart stopped, a cold dread washing over me, a premonition of disaster. Grandpa Joe, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I ran towards the commotion, pushing my way through the crowd of paramedics. I saw him then, lying on a gurney, his face pale and still. His eyes were closed, and an oxygen mask covered his mouth and nose. Grandpa Joe, I cried, my voice cracking. What happened? What's wrong? A paramedic turned to me, his expression sympathetic. He's had a heart attack, he said gently. We're taking him to the hospital. No, I screamed, my voice filled with panic. I have to go with him. I jumped into the back of the ambulance, ignoring the paramedics' protests. I grabbed Grandpa Joe's hand, his skin cold and clammy. I held on tight, refusing to let go, my tears falling onto his hand. Grandpa Joe, I whispered, my voice trembling. Please wake up, please don't leave me. He didn't respond, his eyes remained closed, his breathing shallow. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor filled the ambulance, a constant reminder of his fragile state. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and flashing lights. I held onto Grandpa Joe's hand, praying, pleading, begging for a miracle. I couldn't lose him, he was the only one I had left. As we neared the hospital, Grandpa Joe's eyes fluttered open. He looked at me, his gaze weak but filled with love. Mel, he whispered, his voice barely audible. My Mel, I'm here, Grandpa Joe, I said, my voice choked with tears. I'm right here. He squeezed my hand weakly. Listen, Mel, the shop, it's yours, yours. What, Grandpa Joe, don't talk like that, I said, my voice filled with panic. You're going to be okay. He shook his head weakly. No, Mel, listen, birthday gift, safe, combination, your birthday. His eyes closed again, and his breathing became shallow. Grandpa Joe, I screamed, my voice filled with terror. Grandpa Joe, wake up, please. The paramedics rushed to his side, their movements frantic. They worked on him, their faces grim, but it was too late. Grandpa Joe was gone. The world went silent, the beeping of the heart monitor faded into the background, a distant, muffled sound. I held onto his hand, his cold, lifeless hand, my tears falling onto his skin. He was gone, the one person who truly loved me, the one person who understood me, the one person who believed in me was gone. And I was alone. The funeral was a blur, a sea of black, somber faces, hushed whispers, and the clawing scent of lies. I stood there, numb, going through the motions, shaking hands, accepting condolences, but inside I was hollow. Grandpa Joe was gone, the world felt muted, gray, like a TV with the sound turned off. My parents were there, of course, Anna by their side, looking appropriately mournful, but their grief felt performative, like they were acting a part, playing the grieving relatives for the benefit of the crowd. I couldn't bring myself to talk to them, I couldn't bear to look at them, their presence was a constant reminder of their betrayal, their selfishness, their role in my current desolation. After the service, the lawyer, a portly man with a perpetually serious expression, gathered the family in a small, stuffy room. He cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses, and began to read from a document. Grandpa Joe's will, the lawyer read, his voice droning on. And to my beloved granddaughter, Melinda. The lawyer read, his voice droning on. I bequeath my antique shop, including all its contents and the property it sits upon. My parents exchanged a look. The antique shop, my mom whispered, her voice laced with disdain. That old junk heap, what good is that to anyone? My dad snorted. Probably worth nothing, just a bunch of dusty old stuff. Anna rolled her eyes. Grandpa Joe was so weird, she muttered. Why would he leave that to Melinda? I didn't say anything. I didn't care about the antique shop, not really. All I cared about was Grandpa Joe, and he was gone. But something stirred within me, a flicker of curiosity, a tiny spark of hope in the darkness of my grief. Grandpa Joe had said something about a birthday gift, a safe, a combination. What was that all about? The lawyer continued reading, outlining the details of the will, the distribution of Grandpa Joe's meager savings, which mostly went to various charities, and the transfer of ownership of the antique shop to me. My parents barely paid attention. They were already dismissing it, writing it off as a useless inheritance. Well, that's that, then, my dad said as the lawyer finished reading. Let's go grab some lunch, I'm starving. They filed out of the room, their minds already on other things, their grief of fleeting inconvenience. I lingered behind, a strange mix of emotions swirling within me. Grief, of course, a deep, aching pain that felt like a physical wound, but also a flicker of hope, a tiny ember glowing in the darkness. The antique shop, it wasn't just a shop, it was Grandpa Joe's shop, a place filled with memories, with his presence, with his love. It was a connection to him, a tangible link to the man who had believed in me, who had loved me unconditionally. And it was also a mystery, a puzzle, a whispered promise of a birthday gift, a safe, a combination. I didn't know what it meant, what I would find, or if it was even real, but I clung to it, this tiny thread of hope, this whisper of a possibility. It was something to focus on, something to look forward to, something to pull me through the darkness of my grief. I decided to visit the shop, not right away, not while the grief was still so raw, so overwhelming, but soon, on my birthday, maybe. It felt right, a way to honor his memory, to connect with him one last time. And maybe, just maybe, to discover the secret of his birthday gift, the mystery of the safe, the promise of a new beginning. Birthdays are supposed to be happy, right? Cake, presents, maybe a fun outing with friends. Mine felt empty, bittersweet. It was my birthday, but Grandpa Joe wasn't here, and that made everything feel a little less bright, a little less celebratory. I woke up to the usual nothing, no cheerful happy birthday chorus from my parents, no surprise breakfast in bed, just the dull ache of grief and the quiet hum of the morning. I didn't expect anything different, they hadn't acknowledged my birthday properly in years, not since Anna became their shining star. So yeah, no surprise there. I decided to do something for myself, something that felt, right. I went to Grandpa Joe's shop. The old building creaked and groaned as I pushed open the front door. The familiar smell of dust, old wood, and forgotten treasures washing over me. It was comforting in a way, like stepping back in time, back to a place where I felt safe, loved, and understood. I wandered through the aisles, my fingers tracing the smooth surfaces of antique furniture, the rough textures of old pottery, the faded images in vintage photographs. Each object held a memory, a connection to Grandpa Joe, to his stories, his laughter, his gentle spirit. I found myself in his back office, a small, cluttered room filled with more books, more antiques, and a large, imposing safe tucked away in the corner. It was a heavy, old thing, made of thick metal, with a dial and a handle. The safe, Grandpa Joe's birthday gift. My heart pounded in my chest. I remembered his words, his whispered instructions. Combination, your birthday. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. My birthday, it was the key. Carefully, I turned the dial, entering the numbers, my birth date, the day that marked the beginning of my life, and now, perhaps, a new beginning. The safe clicked open. Inside, nestled in a protective cloth, was a painting. It was a beautiful painting, a landscape of a sun-drenched field with vibrant colors and a dreamy quality. It looked familiar, like something I had seen in a museum, maybe. And then I saw the note. It was handwritten in Grandpa Joe's familiar scroll. Happy birthday, my dearest Mel, it read. This painting is my prized possession. I've hidden it from everyone until now. It's an original Monet painting that I was able to acquire through a stroke of luck years ago. Sell it, my dear, and live happily. I stared at the note, my mind reeling. A Monet, an original Monet. The name echoed in my mind, a whisper of art history, of immense value, of a life-changing fortune. I looked at the painting again, really looked at it, seeing it now with new eyes, the vibrant colors, the masterful brush strokes, the signature in the corner. It was real, it was actually real. Tears welled up in my eyes, a mix of grief and disbelief, of gratitude and overwhelming joy. Grandpa Joe, he had known what my parents were capable of, he had known that I would need this incredible gift, this chance to rebuild my life. He had given me more than just a painting, he had given me hope, he had given me a future, he had given me his love, his support, his belief in me, even from beyond the grave. I clutched the note to my chest, my heart overflowing with emotion. He was still with me, in spirit, watching over me, guiding me. And I knew in that moment that I would be okay, I would survive this, I would thrive. I would honor his memory by living my life to the fullest, by pursuing my dreams, by making him proud. The antique shop, once a symbol of loss, now felt like a treasure trove, a place of hope, a gateway to a new beginning. And the painting, the unexpected birthday gift, the Monet secret, was my ticket to freedom. Okay, so a Monet, seriously, it still felt surreal, like I was living in some crazy dream, a really good dream, but still a dream. But the painting was real, the note was real, and the flutter of excitement in my stomach was definitely real. I had a Monet, a real live, potentially life-changing Monet. First things first, research. I grabbed my laptop, practically vibrating with nervous energy, and dove headfirst into the world of art history. Monet, Impressionism, landscapes, water lilies, my Google search history was a chaotic mess of art terms and artist biographies. I spent hours scrolling through images, comparing brushstrokes, studying color palettes, trying to match my painting to something, anything, online. It was like a treasure hunt, a puzzle I was desperate to solve. And the more I learned, the more excited I got. The style, the subject matter, the signature, it all pointed to one thing: my grandfather's stroke of luck might actually be the real deal. I found a website for a famous auction house, Sotheby's. They had a whole section dedicated to Impressionist art, with images and details of past sales. I spent hours browsing, comparing my painting to the ones that had sold for millions, yes, millions of dollars. The prices were mind-boggling, astronomical numbers that made my head spin. Could my painting be worth that much? Could it actually be true? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. It was like holding a winning lottery ticket, but also being afraid to scratch it off, afraid that it was all too good to be true. But I had to know, I had to find out. I decided to contact the lawyer, the same one who had handled Grandpa Joe's will. He might know someone, an art expert, someone who could authenticate the painting, tell me if it was real, tell me its worth. Making the call was nerve-wracking, my hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the phone, but I did it. I explained the situation, the painting, the note, my grandfather's cryptic message. The lawyer was intrigued, surprised, but also cautiously optimistic. He said he'd look into it, find an expert, arrange for an appraisal. The waiting was torture, every minute felt like an eternity. I kept looking at the painting, admiring its beauty, its vibrancy, its potential. It was more than just a painting, it was a symbol of hope, a promise of a new beginning, a gift from Grandpa Joe, his final act of love and support. Finally, the call came. The lawyer's voice was excited, almost breathless. "Melinda," he said. It's real, it's an original Monet, we need to talk." The world tilted on its axis, I felt lightheaded, dizzy with disbelief. It was real, my grandfather's stroke of luck was real, real. My life was about to change. We met at the lawyer's office, a small, stuffy room that suddenly felt like the center of the universe. He explained the process, the authentication, the appraisal, the auction. It was all so official, so serious, so real. The decision was easy, I had to sell it. It wasn't just about the money, although let's be honest, the money was a huge factor. It was about honoring Grandpa Joe's wishes, it was about securing my future, it was about finally being free. The painting, the Monet secret, was my ticket to a new life, and I was ready to cash it in. The lawyer's office felt like a scene from a movie, all mahogany desks and leather chairs, way fancier than I was used to. Mr. Peterson, the lawyer, was all business, explaining the authentication process, the appraisal, the auction details. Honestly, half of what he said went right over my head, but I nodded along, pretending to understand, mostly just trying not to fidget. This was it, this was really happening. First stop, the authentication. We went to a stuffy art gallery, all hushed whispers and white walls. The art evaluator, a guy with a snooty mustache and an even snootier attitude, looked at the painting like it was some kind of alien artifact. He squinted, he frowned, he poked it with a little tool, I swear he even sniffed it. He said, his voice dripping with skepticism. An interesting piece, but a Monet, I'm not convinced. My heart sank, was this it, was the dream about to shatter? I exchanged a nervous glance with Mr. Peterson, who gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. The evaluator continued his examination, muttering to himself about brush strokes and light and color. He used some fancy magnifying glass, then some even fancier machine that I didn't understand at all. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And then his face changed, his snooty expression softened, his eyes widened, and he actually gasped. "Good heavens," he whispered. It's real." Relief washed over me in a giant wave. I almost laughed, almost cried, almost did a little jig right there in the gallery, but I managed to contain myself, barely. "Real?" I asked, my voice a shaky whisper. "Authentic?" He confirmed, his voice filled with awe. An early Monet, from his formative period, remarkable, truly remarkable. He went on about light and color and technique, all art speak that I mostly tuned out. All I heard was real, authentic Monet, my Monet, Grandpa Joe's Monet. Next up, the appraisal. We went to another fancy office, this time filled with even fancier people. They looked at the painting, they whispered, they scribbled on notepads. It was like some kind of art world version of Antiques Roadshow, except way more serious and way more expensive. Finally, they gave us a number. $40 million. $40 million, I blinked, I think I actually stopped breathing for a second. 40 million, it sounded like Monopoly money, like some kind of ridiculous joke, but it wasn't, it was real. My grandfather's stroke of luck was real, my future was real. The anticipation leading up to the auction was agonizing. It was like waiting for Christmas morning, except way more important, way more life-changing. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I could barely function, I just kept thinking about the money, about what it meant, about the freedom it represented. The auction itself was a whirlwind. It was held in this huge, ornate room filled with people in fancy clothes, all bidding on art like it was some kind of high-stakes poker game. My painting was up last, the grand finale. I sat there with Mr. Peterson, my hands clammy, my heart pounding in my chest. The bidding started low, 30 million, I think, then it climbed, 35 million, 40 million, 50 million. Each bid was like a punch to the gut, a mix of excitement and disbelief. I couldn't believe this was happening, I couldn't believe my life was about to change so drastically. And then the final bid, $60 million. Sold, the gavel banged down, the crowd erupted in applause, and I just sat there, stunned, overwhelmed. $60 million, it was an unfathomable amount of money, a life-altering fortune. I looked at Mr. Peterson, who was beaming at me, his hand outstretched. "Congratulations, Melinda," he said. "You're a very wealthy young woman." I shook his hand, my smile wide, my heart overflowing with joy. It was done, it was real, I was free. Free from my parents' favoritism, free from financial worries, free to pursue my dreams, whatever they might be. The future stretched before me, bright and limitless, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly, utterly happy. The news spread fast, like really fast. One minute I was just Melinda, the quiet, overlooked daughter, the next I was Melinda Thorne, the $60 million art heiress. My phone blew up with calls, texts, emails from people I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly everyone was my best friend. It was ridiculous. And then the call I'd been both dreading and anticipating came, my parents. "Melinda, honey," my mom's voice chirped through the phone, all sweetness and light. "We saw the news, $60 million, isn't that wonderful?" "Yeah, Mom, it's something," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, inside I was seething. We're so proud of you, darling, my dad chimed in. You've always been such a smart, resourceful girl. Really? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Because I seem to remember a lot of no's and we can't afford it when I was growing up. There was a brief silence on the other end, then my mom spoke, her voice a little less cheerful now. Melinda, don't dwell on the past, we're family, we should be celebrating together. Celebrating? I scoffed. Celebrating what? Your neglect, your favoritism, your theft? Melinda, please, my dad pleaded. We made a mistake, we admit it, but we're your parents, we love you. Love me? I repeated, my voice rising. You stole my college fund, you spent my hard-earned money on a car for Anna, and now you have the nerve to talk about love? The floodgates opened, years of pent-up resentment, of hurt, of anger, poured out of me. I told them everything, how their favoritism had made me feel invisible, worthless, how their constant comparisons to Anna had chipped away at my self-esteem, how their theft had shattered my dreams, my future. You didn't care about me, I said, my voice trembling with rage. You only cared about Anna, she was your golden child, your perfect daughter, and I was what, an afterthought, a burden? They tried to interrupt, to defend themselves, but I wouldn't let them. I had waited too long for this, too long to speak my truth, I wouldn't be silenced any longer. You used my money, I continued, my voice shaking but firm. Money I earned, money I saved, money that was supposed to be my ticket to freedom, you stole it from me without a second thought, and now you think you deserve a share of my good fortune, you think I'm going to just forgive and forget? Melinda, please, we're begging you, my mom said, sobbed. We're in debt, we're struggling, we need your help. You need my help? I repeated, incredulous. You need my help after everything you've done, after everything you've taken from me? We're your family, my dad pleaded. We're your parents, you have a responsibility to help us. Responsibility? I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You talk about responsibility, what about your responsibility to me? What about your responsibility to treat me fairly, to love me unconditionally? You failed in that responsibility, Mom and Dad, you failed miserably. We're so sorry, Melinda, my mom cried. We were wrong, please forgive us. Forgive you? I said, my voice cold. Forgive you for stealing my dreams, forgive you for making me feel like I was nothing, forgive you for treating me like I didn't matter? Yes, they both cried in unison. No, I said, my voice clear and strong. I will not forgive you, I will not give you a single cent, this money is mine, it's my future, and you are not going to touch it. But, Melinda, my dad started. No, I interrupted, my voice leaving no room for argument. I'm done with your lies, your manipulations, your favoritism, I'm done with you. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. It was over, I had said my piece, I had reclaimed my power, and it felt good, scary but good. I knew they would try again, they would try everything to get to my money, but I was ready for them, I was Melinda Thorne, and I wouldn't be a victim any longer. I was in control now, and I wouldn't let them take anything else from me.